Good afternoon. My name is Dan Scripps, Chair of the Michigan Public Service Commission. I call this meeting of the Commission to order on September 26, 2024 at 1 p.m. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Chair Scripps,
Present?
Commissioner Peritick,
Present.
Commissioner Carrion.
Present.
Mr. Garrett, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Today's meeting is being held in person at the Commission's office at 7109 West Saginaw Highway, Lansing, Michigan. We are also hosting this meeting remotely using Microsoft Teams. Telephone relay service is available through the phone option. And just a note on that, this week we celebrate International Week of Deaf People and the role of the Michigan Relay Service in helping people connect. This is something that is celebrated across the country. And we noted in the press release that we put out earlier that at least 7.4% of Michiganders identify as deaf, deafblind, or hard of hearing. And so it's crucial for us to ensure Michigan's deafblind, and hard of hearing individuals have equal access to the many benefits and opportunities available to hearing individuals to live, work, play, and communicate in Michigan, including the opportunity to participate in our Public Service Commission hearings. So we do have telephone relay service available through the phone option. If you are participating via Microsoft Teams, you may also turn on the live captions by clicking on the More button at the top right of your Teams window, then clicking on Language and Speech from the drop-down menu, and finally clicking on Turn on Live Captions. As indicated in the notice for today's meeting, if we lose the remote connection, we will not recess but continue in person. The meeting will, however, be recorded and available for future reference on the Commission's website. In addition, the Commissioners can receive comments via lara-mpsc-commissioners2@michigan.gov, and for reference, this email is also included in today's meeting notice. We will have an opportunity for the public to make comments as provided in the agenda. Few notes about this. Comments are limited to 1 per person and 3 minutes each. If you would like to make verbal comments, you must do so in person or remotely through Microsoft Teams or by calling into the meeting by phone. For individuals attending in person and who want to make a verbal comment, you may fill out a comment card. I see that a number of you already have. Comment cards are available at the front table near the podium. For individuals participating remotely by Microsoft Teams and who want to make a verbal comment, you may click on the raise hand button at any time to be queued up for comment. And for individuals participating remotely by phone and who want to make a verbal comment, you may press *5 at any time to be queued up for comment. Public commenters on both Microsoft Teams and on the phone are added to the same speaker queue and will be called upon in the order they enter the speaker queue. And so please do not lower your hand or press *5 again, or you'll be removed from the queue and lose your place in line. And finally, to minimize disruptions, attendees participating by Microsoft Teams or by phone will be muted until we reach the time for public comment. The first order of business is approval of the agenda for today's meeting.
I move for the approval of the agenda for today's commission meeting.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion? We will now have a vote on the motion to approve today's agenda. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by a unanimous vote. The agenda is approved. The next item of business on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the September 5th, 2024 commission meeting.
I move for the approval of the minutes from the September 5th, 2024 commission meeting.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion? We will now have a vote on the motion to approve the minutes from the September 5th, 2024 commission meeting. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by a unanimous vote, and the commission meeting minutes of September 5th, 2024 are approved. The next item of business on the agenda is a presentation by the Liberty Consulting Group regarding the final report utility distribution audits. So today we will hear a much anticipated presentation from Liberty Consulting Group regarding its findings and recommendations relating to its independent audit of consumers' energies and DTE Electric's systems and procedures. The audit stems from an October 2022 commission order that responded to storms that summer, in which almost 500,000 customers were left without power, and tragically multiple children injured as a result of downed wires, with one child losing her life after coming into contact with a downed wire that remained energized. Several storm investigations have been initiated by the commission over the years, resulting in increased scrutiny and reporting. But to be candid, we haven't seen the improvement in reliability and safety performance that customers expect and deserve. As a result, the commission initiated this independent review of the adequacy of the electric distribution systems of these two utilities to determine measures that may mitigate or avert crises, including the loss of life and the loss of essential public services. The commission directed our staff to hire an independent consultant to review all equipment and operations, as well as processes, policies, and procedures, with a focus on reducing the number of outages and duration of outages and needed improvements to safety, particularly with respect to the potential for contact with the electrical distribution system by the public. There are two parts to this audit. Part one, consisting of a physical audit of the existing installed infrastructure, including physical measurements of installed distribution infrastructure to ensure compliance with the utilities engineering standards and comparing the condition of the distribution systems to that of other utilities. And part two, consisting of an audit of each utility's programs and processes to determine whether the existing programs and processes for emergency preparedness, storm restoration, distribution system maintenance, and investment are sufficient and equitable, and whether they properly plan for climate change and changing load profiles. A request for proposal was issued and was ultimately awarded to the Liberty Consulting Group. And today we welcome John Antonuck, co-founder and president of Liberty Consulting Group, to provide a summary of key findings and recommendations. I'd note that the report is available in the case docket, case number U-21305, and was filed there earlier this week. That you can access that case docket through the Commission's website. And with that, I'll turn it over to John. Welcome. We're glad to have you with us. Maybe not. John, can you hear us? Can you see us? Why don't we move forward? We'll adopt the items on the consent agenda, or we'll consider the items on the consent agenda, and then we may come back to this portion of the agenda. So the next item of business on the agenda is the approval of orders and minute actions on the consent agenda. And today the Commission is assisted by Staff Attorney Lisa Gold. I recognize Ms. Gold.
Good afternoon. Today's consent agenda consists of 4 communications matters, 2 electric matters, and 2 gas matters. The proposed orders and minute actions for these matters have been thoroughly vetted, by the Commission's technical and legal staff and are ready for your approval.
Thank you, Ms. Gold. I move for the approval of the orders and minute actions on the consent agenda.
I second the motion.
And oddly, we don't regularly talk about items on the consent agenda, but I did want to flag the order in consent agenda item 4C1, which involves a settlement agreement allowing DTE Gas to extend natural gas service to parts of Wexford County, and particularly the village of Buckley. This comes out of awards made under the low carbon grant program last year, where DTE was one of the recipients of these awards. And the project is projected to provide customer savings to residential customers in the village of Buckley of $1,723 each year, and also result in a 14% reduction in CO2 emissions in that area. And so I just wanted to flag that. It was one of the things connected with a grant that we provided last year, and ultimately a settlement agreement that was entered into with DTE Gas and other participants in that case. Is there any other discussion on the consent agenda? With that, we'll now have a vote on the motion to approve the orders and minute actions on the consent agenda. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by unanimous vote. The orders and minute actions on the consent agenda are approved. I'm going to go back and see if we have with us John Antonuck from Liberty Consulting Group.
Yes, you do. Can you hear me?
Welcome, Mr. Antonuck. We're glad to have
Thank
you with
you.
us.
My unmute button was disabled, so I was struggling mightily to solve that. I guess I have. Good afternoon. With the chair's description of our engagement scope, I would like to focus on some of the major findings and conclusions it produced. But first, I want to acknowledge that throughout the work, the companies cooperated fully, providing all the information that we requested. The nature of the work that we undertook sometimes required significant time to gather and compile data, categorize it, and sometimes prepare special reports or analyses. Despite the large efforts required of them, both worked diligently to get us what we needed. We similarly found the staff fully supportive of our efforts and responsibly engaged in ensuring that our work covered what our proposal offered. I want to divide my presentation into a discussion of inspection, maintenance, repair, and replacement, which comprises a major element of the company plans to improve reliability. I want to talk about the targets that they have set through the 2028 period. I want to discuss what we believe is a need for longer-term plans to compare against those 5-year plans. I want to talk about the importance of data and inputs to both forming those plans and monitoring their performance and execution. Then I want to turn to some particular issues that we found with respect to the plans of each of them individually, and then turn finally to cover 2 other areas that our engagement addressed, which are emergency planning and response, organization processes and procedures, and communications during emergency events. A major focus of our examination came in reviewing the programs that consumers and DTE have conducted to ensure proper inspection, maintenance, repair, and replacement of sub-transmission and distribution facilities of all types. We also looked at the introduction of sectionalization and automation devices in the field, asset management programs, and analytical tools and platforms that give operators information about and control over this. With respect to the targets, and by the way, we found those measures pretty typical of the industry. However, as I will discuss, there are certain aspects of them going forward that we think are important to reconsider and reevaluate. With respect to the targets that the companies have set for reliability improvement, both of them, it should be recognized, have long been 4th quarter performers compared to the industry, particularly according to their principal measure for setting reliability improvement targets through 2028. We found both their targets, although they differ in endpoints and in the nature and scope of the challenges in meeting them, aggressive, considering the substantial improvements and very large expenditures required to achieve them. If you'll excuse me a minute, we're having wind issues down here as the hurricane approaches. Can you still hear me?
We can, John. Yeah.
Okay. Give me a second. I'm going to have to restart here to get my my end back up. My computer is slowing down. Hopefully this will be better. Consumers is seeking to reach essentially median reliability performance, putting it ahead of roughly half of the companies that regularly have their reliability statistics reported by the IEEE. DTE pushes even harder, seeking to reach the midpoint of the 2nd quarter, which would put its performance above almost 2/3 of that same group of companies. We believe that longer duration or longer term scenarios are necessary to compare to the 5-year plans that the companies have presented. The targets of both under their 5-year plans would require improvements so substantial as to have significant impacts on electricity prices. Our engagement did not address electric price affordability or value. Nevertheless, the uncharacteristically large expenditures planned appear to warrant consideration of longer duration scenarios and of alternate balances among programs and initiatives to reach reliability improvement targets. Establishing longer durations to compare will assist in determining improved reliability targets and dates by understanding the electricity price implications of varying what has to be spent and how fast to get there. We did find some programs and initiatives that can be slowed if durations to achieve reliability targets extend or the targets themselves change. We did not find the programs and initiatives of either fundamentally out of character with what others in the industry do. The issue is what is right for companies with 4th quartile reliability facing very large work requirements and very large cost expansion to move to levels well ahead of where they have been, but even so, not among the best or first quartile performers. The question we examined was not what Michigan customers deserve in terms of reliability, but whether plans to get there are achievable, affordable, and in step with electricity price value. Contributing to the importance, and now I want to talk a little bit about the quality of data and inputs that are necessary to drive not just the plans of these two companies, but utilities in general. Contributing to the importance of comparing a more gradual path to improve reliability are concerns about whether the expenditures, even as the companies have proposed, will get them to their goals in 5 years in any event. To do so, work levels will have to increase dramatically, and that will stress both program and project management organizations, which have grown in capability, but can still benefit further from maturation before facing work increases of the magnitudes indicated by the company's plans. Too sudden and large an increase in work will substantially threaten work efficiency and effectiveness by stressing both those management organizations internal to the companies and the outside resources, which will be substantial, that they will need to augment to meet their targets. And it must be remembered that there Michigan infrastructure program occurring simultaneously, but two, which will particularly stress the availability of outside resources to perform the large amounts of work involved. More significantly, projecting what programs and measures will produce in terms of reliability improvement over time creates a need for carefully parsing the unique and incremental reliability contributions of measures that are taken together and that contribute jointly to reliability improvement. Misjudging their relative contributions while at the same time committing to large expenditures on them would further exacerbate the electricity price impacts of gaining reliability improvement. And it would do so by suboptimizing the balance among reliability-focused programs, initiatives, and measures. Another forecasting challenge looms for the companies as well. Their work to date in enhancing and improving reliability through a series of programs and measures has correctly focused on the system's poorer reliability performers. It is not clear, however, that the companies have advanced sufficiently in work under these programs to capture the unique and incremental benefits of programs and measures that operate together in time and together in producing reliability improvement. Parsing their individual contributions is essential in aligning expenditures in a way that will produce the greatest reliability gain for the least cost. Equally important, it is not clear that sufficient precision exists in the measurement of the degree to which reliability gain per unit of work performed or equipment installed will inevitably decline as work proceeds to ever better performing circuits. This is the low-hanging fruit issue. With work on the poorer circuits going first, the data about improvement levels does not necessarily, in fact, it won't translate to circuits that are not in the same condition in terms of poor reliability. Turning now to particular issues, I'd like to start with consumers and note that a principal finding of our report was that its plans focus on an inordinately long vegetation management cycle. That cycle currently, in practical terms, is at 10 years overall. It will not shorten even to a planned 7 years until 2030, which is still many years ahead and past the duration of plans that go through 2028. However, moreover, even that 7 years to be reached in 2030 still far exceeds the 4 to 5 year cycles typical in the industry. Consumers has in fact not trimmed some circuits on its system for as long as 20 years. We strongly emphasize that establishing in the near term a 4 to 5 year overall vegetation cycle should be a first priority for consumers in its efforts to improve reliability. In addition, consumers plans to replace all 40-plus-year-old poles that it encounters during its circuit inspections, whether or not they should be rejected on the basis of their actual condition. In other words, age is the critical factor. That approach is excessive. The company has a large population of vintage poles, meaning smaller diameter, which does make them more subject to failure. However, unless and until it becomes more clear by how much shortened vegetation cycles will improve reliability, we do not consider age-based pole replacement to be demonstrably effective. In addition, consumers also experiences large numbers of underground circuit failures, and they do so particularly with respect to vintage underground residential development, or URD cable. That cable, particularly installed in the last century, has proven problematic across the industry. And across the industry, there are programs to replace it. It's critical for consumers to sustain measures that they have been taking to address its underground circuits, including URD. We did find sound measures at consumers for addressing capacity needs and maintaining overhead circuits and substations and transformers and other equipment. As noted, however, and this bears emphasis, is that the company does overemphasize age as compared to equipment condition in setting its replacement criteria. We did, as our report details, identify a number of programs and initiatives which, while valid, do present opportunity for a slowed pace to permit smoothing out the costs required to meet a reliability improvement target, but over a potentially longer period. Again, we did not do so because these programs fundamentally lack value or because we believe customers do not deserve the level of reliability improvement consumers has targeted. Getting reliability competitive with half the peers against which it measures itself is certainly not dramatic. It is, however, a substantial challenge. Therefore, the point is to secure for comparison purposes a longer 10-year planning scenario, which will permit clearer contrast between how much more it will cost to move faster in reaching improved reliability at a given level, but a range of base targets and progression over longer terms tending towards increasing performance. In other words, using a longer duration scenario and setting interim or milestone improvements that successively move the company towards a final target at the end of the 10-year period. Or I should say, in consumers' case, a period between 5 and 10 years. Now, turning to particular DTE issues, DTE faces significantly greater challenge in reaching improved reliability levels over its planning period. It would do so even if its SAIDI target was not, which it is, more aggressive than consumers' median level performance goal. The work efficiency and effectiveness measurement of reliability benefits I mentioned in connection with consumers also apply to DTE, which faces a similar level of increase or greater level of increase in some cases in work levels, and also a lack of a long duration mature level of data and detail about specific improvements from specific measures. The major issue we found at DTE was that it has not operated a visual overhead circuit inspection program on cycles at all close to those that are typical in the industry. DTE's current cycle is presently at about 20 years between visual inspections for purposes of determining what equipment needs to be repaired or replaced on its overhead circuits. Even its plan to reduce that cycle to 10 years will leave DTE inspecting its poles and pole top equipment on a cycle more than twice as long as the typical 4 to 5 years that others apply, and some use even shorter durations. These long visual inspection durations have left DTE without visual control over what across its whole system exists and poses immediate threats. Shortening its overhead circuit inspection cycle to 10 years, as it proposes, will simply take too long to gain even just visual control over what's out there. And that then must be followed by gaining improved physical control, which comes with repair and replacement of those items identified through inspections. Costs for shorter cycle competitive with the industry will not be greater over the long term. And the much shorter cycles in the industry that apply prove that. However, it will certainly take significant added work and thus costs over the first cycle. Two other significant cost adders warrant consideration at DTE. First, we learned during our work that DTE has advised that maintaining its shortened vegetation management cycle, a cycle it's already working toward and getting close to meeting, will cost more than its plans through 2028 anticipated. Moreover, DTE also faces significantly overlong inspection cycles and repair and replacement backlogs on a range of other facilities on its system besides overhead circuits, which I just discussed. A failure to increase expenditures for those basic blocking and tackling activities will perpetuate those conditions. Combining the three significant priorities I've addressed will add significant short-term costs for DTE, but costs that after the short time will be replaced by significantly lower costs. Those priorities are: one, overhead circuit inspection durations I mentioned; two, the higher than anticipated vegetation management costs; and three, the need for reducing inspection cycles and backlogs on the other elements of its system. As I said, the costs for the first cycle will be high, but they will be replaced by lower costs once DTE gets to effective cycles. Another benefit that will occur through these cycles is reductions in the mid and longer term to restoration costs. By replacing more damaged and defective equipment more quickly and before it fails, restoration costs will fall. And as I will discuss later, it is not clear to us that DTE is, or consumers for that matter, have given full credit to the benefit in reduced restoration costs that will come from producing a system that will be subject to reduced rates of failure during storm and other events. A vastly overriding issue, however, presents a far greater and thus electricity price threat for DTE. Legacy 4.8 kV circuits serve more than 40% of its customers. Those circuits are among the first installed on DTE's system historically. DTE plans to convert some of them through 2028 at reasonably substantial cost. Nevertheless, plans through 2028 leave in place a population of these circuits that DTE says will take as much as 25 billion more to eliminate by 2040. There is not an actual plan for that elimination, but only what DTE calls an aspirational goal. Such high costs for addressing only a single system issue, $25 billion at the high end of DTE's estimate, dwarf those that the company plans to spend on all system issues through 2028, which is more in the range of $9 billion. All those other needs that $9 billion addresses, they're not going to go away after 2028. They will remain and they will continue to require substantial costs, but they're clearly at the risk of being crowded out when 4.8 kV elimination becomes, as it needs to, a plan and not merely an aspiration. I want to take a minute to re-emphasize the need, now that I've particularly talked about some of the particular problems of looking at longer planning scenarios. Again, I want to stress that we haven't been charged with addressing electricity price affordability or value, but it seems reasonably clear that those are in issue. The sources and magnitudes of the cost planned and required appear clearly to warrant a soundly constructed, at least 10-year plan, and one that considers not just one, but multiple interim reliability targets that progress toward a final goal. In DTE's case, even that expansion of planning won't do the job. And the reason is that the plans for the 4.8 kV system will obviously take a significantly longer time to accommodate. And that's given the costs that are already postulated. I've been in the industry a long time, and I've seen a lot of mega projects, which this certainly qualifies as. And experiencing in the industry says that estimates of this type at this stage are actually more likely to be exceeded than they are to be underrun. So the company has postulated $20 to $25 million. I tend to look at those as, if anything, on the lower side of expectations, recognizing that the information to support either my opinion or the company's opinion on that matter are certainly very, very preliminary. Turning now to emergency planning and response, we examined the plans and the organizations and the personnel responsible for executing them. We also looked at pre-event planning, recent storm history, storm impact forecast accuracy, restoration performance, wires down processes and performance, and restoration budgeting. We found the organizations and the structure for managing storm events appropriate overall. However, neither company met wire down relief factor metrics in 2023. We do think that initiatives underway should improve performance to the extent that they do as they plan, provide more resources, enhance communication tools, and improve the response to call out requests of employees to serve on storm duties. Even after improvement and expanding qualified personnel, however, it is clear that numbers of wires down and catastrophic storms will continue to remain a challenge for both companies. In particular, in DTE's case, we have not before seen their practice of departing wires down after taping them off under certain criteria. For example, proximity to schools, roads, and parks, and other high-risk areas. Even after increasing wire guard resources substantially, which DTE needs to do, the company will still face a dilemma. That dilemma results from this fact: those who would remain at guarded locations are the people who could be dispatched to locations where electrical hazard risk still hasn't been determined. So the need to stay at a potentially leaves open locations of unknown risk. That's the dilemma, is how does one make sure that guarding currently identified situations does not unduly slow the process of identifying additional ones out there. To some extent, DTE's system exacerbates this problem because of the number of 4.8 kV circuits it employs using a Delta configuration, as it's known, are subject to remaining live when down. We have recommended a reprioritization of where the company is installing some devices to locations that will reduce the potential or the numbers of down wire while still energized risk. As I said, we found an opportunity for the companies to do a better job, a more accurate job, I should say, of identifying the degree to which its future restoration costs will be reduced by the reliability improvements that it makes. However, we also found restoration budgeting problematic at both. They use 5-year averages to forecast restoration costs, and that has produced large overruns when compared to actuals. Overruns regularly repeated, particularly in large magnitudes, diminish the ability to promote cost control and accountability. There needs to be an effort to produce better budgets for and hold managers accountable to better and more accurate budgets for restoration. Both companies have, however, shown improvement in reducing overall durations. It's a little harder to get your handle on that improvement when it comes to catastrophic storms, because unlike others, they don't really have a top quantity end. So there's a fairly small range on the size of the other categories. So it's easier to consider them comparable. But with catastrophic storms, they might all be called catastrophic, but they can still be extremely different in consequence. With respect to outage communications, both consumers and DTE experienced significant customer dissatisfaction and high numbers of complaints after the 21, 22, and 23 storms, which occurred. Lack of available and inaccurate estimated times to restore, or ETRs, misleading restoration status notifications, and multiple ETRs for the same outage contributed to the dissatisfaction. Subsequent changes both have improved both ETR performance and the metrics used to track that performance. Both companies provide reasonable self-service options for outage information, but as the companies would recognize, major storms have exposed system weaknesses due to a lack of, in our view, of comprehensive stress and load testing of those systems before events occur to determine what their capabilities are likely to be. However, improvements have been made and the systems performed reasonably well in the 2024 storms in terms of availability and accuracy. When customers wanted to reach a representative in recent storms, accessibility to the call center was continuous and available. And both companies now are committed to regular stress testing that will model large-scale outage events in order to make sure that the systems they're putting in have the right capacity and that system changes in one area have not produced constraints or difficulties in another. We found the current versions of storm communications plans sound and recent storm updates clear, consistent, and timely, and they now occur across multiple channels, which particularly people younger than myself have come to rely on more and more for getting information. Engagement with external stakeholders has become more proactive and more effective. Lately, the use of broadened channels, and I'll cite Zoom as an example, has helped get critical messages out earlier and to wider audiences. Improved ETRs and systems for tracking field resources allow personnel to provide more and more accurate information to stakeholders, along with getting to locations to get restoration work done more effectively and timely. However, with plans, resources, and channels now reasonably well established and improved in recent years, management challenge now turns more to ensuring regular communications with officials and leaders to keep storm protocols and preferred channels current, and to instill confidence that when they're critical, relationships will work, accessibility to company people will be constant, and information will be good and complete and timely. To close, our engagement had a large scope and it covered a lot of ground. I've tried to hit some of the report's overall findings, but somehow I kind of, if I had a couple more hours, I think I'd still leave some things out. I want to thank you, as does my team, for the opportunity to have performed this important engagement, for the healthy and constructive working relationships we had with your staff, and for the patience that all have shown, and that means your staff and you, the commission, in waiting for our report, and the companies in responding to our many requests. As we waited painstakingly at some points through the extensive work needed to complete it.
Thank you, John. And on behalf of the commission, we want to thank you and your staff. This was a report worth waiting for, and I think it provides some comprehensive documentation around some of the challenges, but also some solutions. I think we've got maybe time for a couple of questions, and then we'll get to the rest of the agenda. Commissioner Pertic?
Okay, sure. Yeah, thank you, John. Really appreciate the thoroughness of the report and of the work that you and your team performed. I'll admit I actually really enjoyed reading through the many hundred pages of the of your report, audit report. So I think really what we would like to understand is how long do you think it will take for Michigan residents to start seeing real improvements to their outage frequency and duration if the utilities act on the recommendations that you provided in the audit?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you use the word see, because that has two important senses in this context. You will see reliability improvement by looking at data that adjusts for weather, which is hard to do. It's doable. If you're a customer, I think what you see is, how often your lights are out. You probably don't have quantitative analysis that compares it to number of major event days this year versus last year. So the first problem that clouds visibility, or seeing, I think was the term you used, is that a period of good weather can make mediocre efforts look pretty darn good in terms of reliability, and a period of bad performance look kind of shabby. So I think the problem you'll have in terms of visibility at the customer level is that weather variation will make it hard to trend improvement. In terms of kind of how we measure it, when we start thinking about major event days and gray sky days, which are, there's no sun, but there's also not what I'm experiencing now, which is about 80-mile-an-hour winds outside my window. That I think you will see slow improvement. You have to remember that once the companies make a commitment, they have to plan resources. They have to hire people to trim trees, and they have to develop budgets and plans. So that it'll take time to get the plans together. Across the first year of implementing them, all the benefits they make are really going to only have half-year benefit, because on average they're going to be put in the middle of the year. Not everything goes in the first day of the construction season. So you're not likely to see much the first year. I think the following years of the first cycle, which, and I think whether it's vegetation or poles inspections, we're talking 4 to 5 years. I think you'll see incremental improvements, because particularly DTE is going to have to phase in the new cycles. I think if price, affordability, and value are an issue, it's probably going to take 2 cycles. It will take 2 cycles. That's for the circuit inspections. For vegetation, the same thing, but for different reasons. The first cycle, when you advance, when you shorten the cycle for vegetation, it's usually the work is not as complete or as thorough as the second cycle. So you really should start to see much more significant improvement across the second cycle. And then I think there's kind of, to me, there's a turning point, because after that second cycle, you've reached a steady state. You've swallowed the costs of the added work you have to take to get on that cycle. Once you're on that cycle, the work goes down substantially. So there you've turned the corner, in the sense that I think you've now seen real improvement. And moreover, either to apply to continuing activities or to saying to customers, we've made so much progress, we don't need to spend as much money anymore. So that's the best I think I can tell you. I think the hardest part is going to be customers are going to see the increased prices right away, but because of the other factors I've mentioned, I think it takes a lot of outreach and a lot of communication to make them understand the kind of the patience, and also the right way to measure to see if things really are getting better, despite the fact that as I said, 3 or 4 years of bad weather make it look like things are going downhill instead of uphill. That's a long answer. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Carrion?
Yeah, actually, I think I'll elaborate a little bit on that point, because I think effectively what you're describing are economies of scales and efficiencies that we would expect once these cycles get recalibrated from longer to shorter durations. And so I'm curious, because you have so much experience and have seen this from other states and other utilities, what are your insights or examples of best practices that you can kind of comment on to help moderate that anticipated very large, one-time cost increase against developing these shorter cycles, and just if you have examples of strategies that have helped mitigate those cost impacts?
Yeah, I think it's strategies, but your question got me immediately thinking about dimensions. What are the dimensions that you need to apply when you need to be dynamic and creative, when you have to kind of swallow a bit of a somewhat bitter pill early for the sake of getting better down the road. I'm gonna talk first about criteria. For pole replacement, I think when you're, as DTE, when you're running a 20-year cycle and you decide what to reject, you make that decision on the basis that you might not see that circuit for that purpose for 10 or 20 years. So what are you going to do in terms of what you decide to reject then versus what you decide to reject if you know you're going to be back in 4 years? So I think the first key is making sure that you're not kind of overly generous in what you're marking as rejected and in need of replacement. Next is backlog. I don't think it's right to slow the inspections because, as I was trying to stress, visual control of the system is critical. So you need to do the inspections, but those inspections are going to produce a list of work, a to-do list, if you will. Pretty darn complicated to-do list. You can backlog based on priorities. And if you don't have financial resource or electricity pricing issues, that's maybe not so important. But where you do, I think you just have to say these are the things where we are going to have to bear risk for the first cycle that's greater than risk we're going to tolerate once we kind of get ourselves, fully together on this. The next dimension is what I always call leveling, and there are two kinds of leveling here. There are a lot of assets here that need to be worked. There's overhead circuits, there's leaking circuit breakers, there's underground circuits. You need to have a sense of where you want to go overall with each of them over whatever your planning period is. And you need to have a sense of what resources you're going to dedicate. But here's the other thing you need to do. You need to know you're wrong, because what's going to happen as you go through the plan, some things are going to turn out not to look as bad as others, and others are going to look worse. So you can't blindly follow by category the plans. You have to prioritize, you have to prioritize everything together. So you might say to yourself, I'm still uncomfortable with where I am on underground circuits, but they're improving at a better rate than overhead circuits. So I'm going to reallocate. The other thing you need to do, particularly for companies that have a lot of districts that each have their own responsibilities and accountability, you have to levelize between or among districts too. So if District A's not getting the same level of production as District B, you can't say, well, A, they have their resources, and B, they have theirs, that's fixed. No, they're not fixed. They have to flex too. And then the last dimension to me is what I'll call kind of I've never found a good word for this. I call it bargain hunting. In any activity you do, the last 5%, 10%, it varies, of dollars you spend are the least effective. And what you have to understand in dynamic circumstances, you have to always be looking at that last 5 or 10% and say things like, I went with a company that I've used successfully for years, and I expanded their work by 10%, and they're not handling the 10% well, and I don't know what I'm going to do about it. I can't change them out right away, but I'm just not comfortable that I'm getting value. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put them back to where they were, and I'm going to put that 5% there or 10% there somewhere else, even if strictly on a reliability basis, I might say I really need that. I need that other 10% there. Off for a year, I'm going to find other resources. Maybe DTE is ahead on getting their vegetation surge done. I'm going to make sure that where we're using some of the same contractors, I tap out those and hold off on that 10%. I call a bargain hunt. But these are all dimensions, I think, that have to be looked at together, and that's why we emphasize two critical things in the report. One is the asset management organizations, which are improving, but need to get really, really good to handle this level of work. And also the project management organizations, which are also improving, but are facing such a huge increase in work that I think they're going to need to keep moving pretty quickly up a I'll call it a maturation curve. It's not a learning curve. They're capable folks, certainly, but their systems, the resources, all of that are going to have to be top notch to make this all work with the dynamic interplay among those 4 or 5 dimensions.
Thank you.
John, with several more hours, I think we would have several more questions as well. But I think we're gonna call it here. Again, really, I don't expect that this is the end of this discussion. In fact, I know it isn't based on the orders that we have in front of us later in the agenda, but really do appreciate the work of you and your team. And in the immediate term, encourage you to stay safe. And we'll be thinking about you and others as you go through this hurricane.
Okay. Thank you. We all of us down here appreciate that thought.
So we have a number of orders yet on the agenda. We do have, I think, 4 comment cards. I see 3 people online. We will extend this meeting in order to hear from all who would like to provide comment, particularly since we didn't get to everybody that we would have liked to hear from when we were in Detroit last week for the public hearing. But we will, I think, move at this point to agenda item 5 and the approval of other orders. And at this point, I will recognize Ms. Gold.
Item 5A1 is case number U-11830, which involves a request filed by AT&T Michigan for an extension of the approved performance measures and remedy plan. The order before you approves the extension.
Thank you, Ms. Gold. I move for the approval of the order in case number U-11830.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion? We will now have a vote on the motion to approve the order. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by unanimous vote. The order in case number U-11830 is approved. I recognize Ms. Gold.
Item 5B1 is case number U-20147, which involves a matter on the Commission's own motion for certain regulated electric utilities to file their distribution investment and maintenance plans and for other related uncontested matters. The order before you follows the September 8th, 2022 order in this docket, summarizing comments in response thereto. It directs the Commission staff to develop a protective order for use in this matter with an opportunity for comment. It schedules a comment period on a straw proposal for distribution investment and maintenance plan filing requirements moving forward. It directs the Commission staff to convene a collaborative session with interested persons following the comment period on the proposed filing requirements, and for the Commission staff to subsequently file a revised straw proposal if needed within 30 days following the collaborative session, and directs the Financial Incentives and Disincentives Work Group to evaluate potential appropriate metrics for distributed energy resources in the docket for case number U-21400.
I move for the approval of the order in case number U-20147.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion?
Yes, Chair.
Meredith?
First, I'd just really like to thank the large staff team that worked so hard on the review of these distribution plans and putting together the straw proposal that we're putting out for comment in this order, as well as all the intervening parties who participated with the comments and analysis to make this process work. A special thanks goes to the distribution planning section, a few of which I know are here today, including Taylor Becker, Kit Sabo, Anna Schiller, Lee Silagi, and Paul Proudfoot. This order carefully outlines how we think we can make the distribution planning process better for improving utility performance and planning into the future, including supporting details, alternatives analysis, climate risks, and many other metrics and improvements. I'm optimistic that as a result of these distribution plans and the strong straw proposal that's put forward by staff, that with the help of all of our commenters, we will strengthen our electric distribution system and address Michigan's reliability challenges in an affordable way.
Thank you, Commissioner Pertic. Is there additional discussion?
Yes, thank you. The order we issue today marks a significant milestone that reflects years of engagement and analysis aimed at achieving our objectives for safety, reliability, resiliency, cost effectiveness, affordability, and accessibility. And so I also want to thank all the parties involved for their contributions to this effort, with a special thanks to our staff for their very thorough, thoughtful review of many plans, comments, supporting information, and their ability to forge connections and propose next steps to grant structure structure to what's been an iterative process. And I just want to highlight 3 points from the order and the straw proposal. Commissioner Peretick mentioned that distribution plans must align with other required planning efforts. They must include meaningful input from third parties, and they must adequately address affordability. And so the coordination with other planning efforts that we call out include integrated resource planning, transportation electrification planning, transmission planning, and ultimately we're looking for proposals that are consistent across plans and rate cases with any differences explained. And so this is truly meant to serve as an informational resource docket that can feed into our utilities' other rate case filings and include supporting data that reflects the strategic vision from the plans. And we also just heard about the process behind and insights from the unprecedented distribution system audits for DTE and consumers. So we'll look for those to inform future distribution planning for our 2 largest investor-owned utilities too. And then I do want to emphasize that fostering engagement and integrating diverse perspectives in the plan development must include appropriate outreach and opportunities for feedback, both before and after filing distribution plans. And we expect to see a direct link between those comments, recommendations, accounts of lived experience from third parties in the development and implementation of the plan. And then I also want to end on a point of on affordability and equity, stressing the need for equity and environmental justice analyses in both our distribution planning and rate case proceedings. And again, just emphasize the importance of seeking, as we also repeat in our order, funding options beyond rates, increasing third-party and community engagement to address affordability and cost effectiveness, and going beyond narratives on affordability and demonstrating how proposed investments are equitably distributed and in the best interest of customers.
Thank you, Commissioner Carrion. Thank you, Commissioner Carrion. We will now have a vote on the motion to approve the order. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by a unanimous vote. The order in case number U-20147 is approved. I recognize Ms. Gold.
Item 5B2 is case number U-20165, which involves an application filed by Consumers Energy Company for ex parte approval of amendment number 3 to a power purchase agreement between Consumers Energy Company and Jackson County Solar LLC. The order before you approves the application.
I move for the approval of the order in case number U-20165.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion? We will now have a vote on the motion to approve the order. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by unanimous vote. The order in case number U-20165 is approved. I recognize Ms. Gold.
Item 5B3 is case number U-21053, which involves an application filed by Indiana Michigan Power Company for reconciliation of its power supply cost recovery plan costs for the 12-month period ended December 31, 2022. The order before you approves the application as modified by the order.
I move for the approval of the order in case number U-21053.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion? We will now have a vote on the motion to approve the order. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by unanimous vote. The order in case number U-21053 is approved. And I recognize Ms. Gold.
Item 5B4 is case number U-21305, which involves an investigation, audit, and review of the methods employed by Consumers Energy Company and DTE Electric Company to secure good electric service and ensure the safety of the public under Michigan law. The order before you directs the utilities to file responses to the completed audits and invites comments and reply comments from interested persons.
I move for the approval of the order in case number U-21305.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm really thrilled that we now have the results of this distribution system audit that we kicked off back in 2022. It has been a long process and many, many hours have gone into this final report, not only from our third-party consultant, Liberty, that you got to hear from in the presentation earlier, but also from our staff here at the MPSC. And I do want to especially thank Taylor Becker, Jessica Duell, Kit Sabo, Luke Denon, Ryan Boutte, Lee Silagi, Anna Schiller, Jing Shi, Allie Durfee, Paul Proudfoot, Julie Baldwin, Nick Evans, and Lynn Beck, and all others who helped for your expert review and guidance throughout this process. As you heard in the presentation, we now have a truly comprehensive deep dive into the state of the electric distribution system, both for Consumers Energy and DTE Electric. We now understand the physical state of the poles and wires and substations and all of the physical equipment that delivers electricity to our homes and businesses. We also now understand the programs and processes that are in place at the utilities for how they maintain their systems, plan for storms, and respond to outage events, among many other things. The main finding I was hoping to get out of this audit is where the most effective place is to invest to improve reliability. When we initiated this audit, we were well aware that the number of power outages and the duration of those outages was and still is much too long for Michigan customers. What we wanted to understand is why. And then once we know why, what can we do to fix it? And this audit has concrete recommendations for the utilities to do just that, as Mr. Antonuk described earlier. And I'm looking forward to now making those happen. But first, this order today will allow for comment both from the utilities to respond and from any interested parties, with a special emphasis on quick action from the utilities to rectify any safety-related issues. So if you have any thoughts, reactions, or additional recommendations for the utilities that you would like to share, please do so in this docket, U-21305, before December 15th.
Thank you, Commissioner Peretick. I also want to echo the thanks for John to our staff. I also want to thank the companies, as John did, for their constructive engagement through this process, really providing the documentation and access to key decision makers within both Consumers and DTE that were necessary in order to complete this audit. I think the goal in this process is one we all share: a safer, more reliable electric distribution system, one with fewer outages, where the outages are shorter when they do happen, and with fewer customers experiencing multiple outages, and trying to understand the most cost-effective way to get there. The audit that was entered into the docket earlier this week and is the subject of this order includes a whole host of recommendations in three primary buckets. First, safety issues that need immediate attention. Second, moving toward compliance with Commission rules and industry standards. And third, improvements to the utility distribution planning process to improve performance in the long run. We now want to hear from you, as Commissioner Peretick said, both on the audit findings and recommendations themselves, as well as to the utility responses. I don't believe that the challenges identified in the audit are anything new, and certainly not surprising to anyone who has experienced poor reliability performance over the past several years. And I would also state that this is not a starting point. We've been working to address these issues for a number of years in any number of ways, including this audit, the distribution planning process that was discussed earlier, the financial incentives and disincentives work to try and better align utility financial performance with the performance of the distribution systems and the experiences of their customers, updates to the Commission's service quality rules and technical standards for electric service, and a number of other avenues. And we all have also heard, as John noted, that there has been some notable improvements, both in outage restoration, communication during storm events, improvements in the asset management organizations, the project management organizations. But we also know that there's more work to do. And what I'm most excited about in this audit is the focus on solutions. The solutions identified by this independent third-party team of experts give us the beginnings of what I think is a roadmap to get to that better, more reliable, safer system, that goal that we all share. And so again, appreciate the work of all involved and excited to continue the efforts to improve the safety and reliability of the utility distribution systems here in Michigan. Is there any additional discussion? We'll now have a vote on the motion to approve the order. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by unanimous vote. The order in case number U-21305 is approved. I recognize Ms. Gold.
Item 5B5 is case number U-21477, which involves an application for approval of interconnection procedures filed by Upper Peninsula Power Company pursuant to Mich Admin Code R 460-920. The order before you approves interconnection procedures, forms, and agreements for Upper Peninsula Power Company.
I move for the approval of the order in case number U-21477.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion? We will now have a vote on the motion to approve the order. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by unanimous vote. The order in case number U-21477 is approved. I recognize Ms. Gold.
Item 5B6 is case number U-21508, which involves an ex parte application filed by Northern States Power Company for approval to implement light emitting diode automatic outdoor lighting services. The order before you approves the application.
I move for the approval of the order in case number U-21508.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion? We will now have a vote on the motion to approve the order. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by a unanimous vote. The order in case number U-21508 is approved. I recognize Ms. Gold.
Item 5B7 is case number U-21555, which involves an application filed by Upper Peninsula Power Company for authority to increase its retail electric base rates and for other relief. The order before you approves a settlement agreement resolving all issues in the case.
I move for the approval of the order in case number U-21555.
I second the motion.
As we often do in rate cases, I would like to briefly highlight a couple of the key provisions in the settlement agreement that's in front of us today. The order before us and the underlying settlement agreement, or the order before us approves a settlement agreement by which UPCO would be authorized to increase its rates by $9 million. This agreement balances needing investment with ever-present considerations over cost and affordability, with a typical residential customer who uses 500 kilowatt hours a month seeing an increase of $7.52 or 5.7% on their monthly bill effective January 1st of next year. The settlement represents an overall capital structure of 50% common equity and an authorized return on equity of 9.86%. And notably, the settlement agreement includes a commitment from UPCO to donate $200,000 to organizations benefiting low-income customers within its service territory, with the utility conferring with our commission staff and Attorney General Dana Nessel's office to identify appropriate organizations to receive this donation and the parameters of the donation. I'd like to thank the participants in this case, including UPCO, the Attorney General, the Citizens Utility Board of Michigan, Calumet Electronics Corporation, Billerud Americas Corporation, and the Association of Businesses Advocating Tariff Equity, as well as our MPSC staff for their work and creativity in finding agreement represented by the settlement agreement before us. Is there any additional discussion? We will now have a vote on the motion to approve the order. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by unanimous vote. The order in case number U-21555 is approved. I recognize Ms. Gold.
Item 5B8 is case number U-21781, which involves, on the Commission's own motion, the award of grants under the Renewable Energy and Electrification Infrastructure Enhancement and Development Grant Program under Public Act 119 of 2023. Staff member Amy Rittenhouse will describe this order.
Good afternoon. On July 31st, 2023, Governor Gretchen Whitmer signed into law Public Act 119 of 2023, directing the Michigan Public Service Commission to develop a renewable energy and electrification infrastructure enhancement and development grant program for businesses, nonprofit organizations, local units of government, and tribal governments for the purpose of planning, developing, designing, acquiring, or constructing renewable energy and electrification infrastructure projects. In addition, the grants awarded will meet one or more of the My Healthy Climate Plan goals and form an impact study that includes an analysis of potential cost savings, environmental impacts, and local economic benefits. Public Act 119 appropriated $21.3 million, of which $20.8 million would be awarded for renewable energy and electrification infrastructure enhancement and development projects within the state of Michigan. On December 20th, 2023, the Commission issued a request for proposals and applications January 11th, 2024. Per legislative requirements, a 45-day public comment period followed. Applicants then had the opportunity to submit revised proposals based on the comments.
A total of 52 applications were originally received, totaling over $147 million in both infrastructure development and planning projects, and they were all posted to the grant webpage. The Commission expresses its appreciation to the applicants for providing very thoughtful proposals. In awarding the grants, the Commission used the criteria outlined in the request for proposals. Based on its review of these applications, the Commission awards the following grants. Alpena Community College Farming the Sun Solar Array Project, Bay Area Transportation Authority Rooftop Solar Project, Boys and Girls Club Grand Rapids Youth Commonwealth, the Style Club Electrification and Microgrid Project, the City of Ann Arbor Bryant Neighborhood Decarbonization Project, Consumers Energy's Network Geothermal Planning Project, EcoWorks and their Capuchin Soup Kitchens for a solar battery energy storage technology project at 3 locations, as well as an additional location for a solar heat pump and energy storage technologies project. Electric City ESS for a battery storage facility project. Kalamazoo Nature Center for a sustainable mobility hub project. Keweenaw Bay Indian Community for an NRD locations solar and battery storage project. The Lansing Board of Water and Light, Justice 40 Communities Hometown Energy Planning Program. Lansing School District's Geyer Park Elementary Rooftop Solar Project. The Powama Westphalia Community Schools Solar Array. The Pioneer Resources Facility Solar Project. Solar Tonic with Solidarity and their Community Solar LED Smart Poles and Wi-Fi Project. The Vicinity Energy District Energy System Electrification Project. And finally, Ypsilanti's Performance Space Solar EV Charging Stations Project. The total awarded amount for the Renewable Energy and Electrification Infrastructure Enhancement and Development Grants is $20.8 million. Details on each award can be found in the order and will be posted to the Renewable Energy EIED Grants webpage. The Commission will pursue communications with grantees forthwith with an anticipated grant start date of November 15th, 2024. As always, the grants are contingent upon review and approval of the State Administrative Board. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
I move for the approval of the order in case number U-21781.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion?
Yeah, just very briefly, I'm just really excited to announce these 19 grants today for some really fantastic projects that Ms. Rittenhouse just went through that will advance the My Healthy Climate Plan. We got a large number of excellent submissions to the grant program, as she noted, and it was really hard to narrow these down to decide on the 19 that we're awarding today. And I'd really especially like to thank Amy Rittenhouse and Lynn Beck for their help in managing this grant award process. And I'm really excited to see all the positive change in Michigan that will happen as a result of this funding that we are awarding today.
Thank you, Commissioner Pertic. Is there any additional discussion? We will now have a vote on the motion to approve the order. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by unanimous vote. The order in case number U-21781 is approved. Recognize Ms. Gold.
Item 5C1 is case number U-21271, which involves an application filed by DTE Gas Company for approval to implement a gas cost recovery plan for the 12-month period ending March 31, 2024. The order before you approves the plan as set forth in the order and accepts the company's 5-year forecast, but also provides a caution with regard to costs associated with responsibly sourced gas premiums pursuant to MCL 460.6H subsection 7.
I move for the approval of the order in case number U-21271.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion? We will now have a vote on the motion to approve the order. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by unanimous vote. The order in case number U-21271 is approved. Recognize Ms. Gold.
Item 5C2 is case number U-21341, which involves an application filed by Consumers Energy Company for ex parte approval to waive meter testing requirements in the Commission's technical standards for gas service until December 31, 2025, and to approve alternative natural gas diaphragm meter testing procedures. The order before you approves the application, establishes an annual reporting requirement, and requires the company to file revised tariff sheets within 30 days.
I move for the approval of the order in case number U-21341.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion? We will now have a vote on the motion to approve the order. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by unanimous vote. The order in case number U-21341 is approved. I recognize Ms. Gold.
Item 5C3 is case number U-21408, which involves an application filed by DTE Gas Company for ex parte authority to extend its voluntary Clean Vision natural gas balance pilot program. The order before you approves the application with revised testimony and exhibits.
I move for the approval of the order in case number U-21408.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion?
Yep, briefly, thank you, Chair. I want to take the opportunity to emphasize the importance of reporting outcomes in evaluating the performance of any utility pilot program. In the instant application, the company proposes to continue issuing a public comprehensive report detailing the prior year's results of the natural gas balance pilot program. And in our order, we request reporting of required metrics that are consistent with other voluntary programs designed to reduce carbon emissions and include performance assessment areas such as enrollment levels, customer enrollment levels, information about projects utilized by the company to source the carbon reduction supply, quantity of total emissions negated, marketing costs, quantity, source, and cost of renewable gas and carbon offsets purchased, forecast for customer participation and marketing studies. And this reporting ultimately is critical to justify the resulting benefits the company can assess from implementation of such programs, especially in verifying anticipated emission reductions.
Thank you, Commissioner Carrion. Is there any additional discussion? We will now have a vote on the motion to approve the order. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by a unanimous vote. The order in case number U-21408 is approved. Recognize Ms. Gold.
Item 5C4 is case number U-21526, which involves an ex parte application filed by Consumers Energy Company for approval of modifications to the company's gas transportation customer pooling program. The order before you approves the application.
I move for the approval of the order in case number U-21526.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion? We will now have a vote on the motion to approve the order. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by a unanimous vote. The order in case number U-21526 is approved. I recognize Ms. Gold.
Item 5C5 is case number U-21540, which involves an application filed by Michigan Gas Utilities Corporation for authority to increase its retail natural gas rates and for other relief. The order before you approves a settlement agreement resolving all issues in the case.
I move for the approval of the order in case number U-21540.
I second the motion.
And I'd also like to say just a few words about this order before we move to the vote. As Ms. Gold mentioned, this too is a settlement agreement resolving the issues in Michigan Gas Utilities rate case. Under the agreement, Michigan Gas Utilities would be permitted to increase rates by $7 million, with a typical residential customer using 100 CCF of gas a month, seeing an increase of approximately 59 cents or 0.7% on their monthly bill as of January 1st, 2025. In addition, as a result of ongoing work to replace the company's gas distribution mains in order to reduce leaks and improve safety, rates will step up an additional 23 cents per month on January 1st, 2026, and 33 cents per month starting on January 1st, 2027 for an average residential customer. As with the UPCO case discussed earlier, the increase represents an overall capital structure of 50% common equity and an authorized return on common equity of 9.86%. I appreciate the work of the parties to this case, including Attorney General Dana Nessel, the Citizens Utility Board of Michigan, the Association of Businesses Advocating Tariff Equity, the MPSC staff, and I support the order adopting this settlement agreement. Is there any additional discussion? We will now have a vote on the motion to approve the order. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by unanimous vote. The order in case number U-21540 is approved. Okay. We've now reached the time reserved for members of the public to address the commission. I appreciate the patience There are times that our meetings are 15 minutes. We're an hour and 25 minutes into this one. And so thanks for hanging with us. We obviously had a lot on the agenda today. But as mentioned in the notice for today's meeting, we will take public comments in the following order. First from individuals attending in person, and I think we've got 5 or 6 cards here. And then from individuals participating remotely, either through Microsoft Teams or the phone, who have entered the speaker queue. As a reminder, this public comment period is for commissioners to listen to comments and concerns and not to answer specific questions. When providing comment, please indicate your name and where you live if you're willing to share that. And again, please limit comments to 1 per person and keep them brief, no longer than 3 minutes, so we have a chance to hear from all who would like to comment. So I will call people and I'll call you and then notify the person who's on deck as well. So I think it's Heyman Clark, and I'll just apologize in advance if I'm butchering names. And then Naili Pineda? Am I even close? Okay. Do we have Common Clark? Okay.
So yeah, I want to, of course, thank you for this meeting. And also to getting to see a little bit about the audit. I did have some thoughts. So of course, you know my face. You saw me last week.
Nice to see you again.
Detroit. And particularly one thing that I hear, both as an advocate and organizer residents, and also to someone who's able to be here from Liberty Consulting Group, is that
I think you're, sorry, we'll start your time over, but I think you're not actually, I can hear you, but I think the people watching on YouTube can't, so.
Okay.
Oh, cool.
There we go.
Green light.
Excellent. Perfect.
These
All right, we'll
are
start
super
over. You have
fancy.
not
I love
used any
these.
of your 3 minutes.
Yeah, so I'll give my name and then I'll kind of segue. So I'm Kamau Clark. I'm a resident of Detroit, Detroit's East Side. Of course, I also attended the hearing last week in Detroit. And so I'll kind of start as far as my thoughts on the audit as well as particularly reliability with thinking of my granny. My granny was born in 1943. That would make her 81 years old. Earlier this week in Cranes, Detroit, there was an article that stated that much of our grid actually dates back to 1920, which means that the grid is older than my granny. When we think about my granny, she always used to say, don't host a party if you're going to nickel and dime people, which means that don't host a party if you can't afford to handle your business. So when we think about DTE, record-breaking profits year after year, particularly funding shareholders, we've seen the articles about private jets and all these things that, all these funding channels and where money's going. I think it's important, one, as a commission, to be really thinking about what this audit says about where our grid is, what the needs are. You are in a really hard position of having to manage a grid that needs so much. It's behind. It's not what residents need. It's also not reliable in the way that we need it. Another thing that I heard was that even with the plans or lack thereof of plans, it actually won't meet what we need. So I really do want to encourage you, one, in respects to when we think about rates, when we think about what ratepayers are paying, this audit did not go into affordability. It was focused on reliability. The biggest concerns that we have are reliability and affordability. And so I do want to encourage you to be considering that moving forward, both with the findings of this amazing work that these folk have done, but also in future work to actually be getting that feedback and seeing what is actually equitable in regards to rates. I know that Public Act 231 last year actually calls for you all to consider affordability. That wasn't the case before, apparently, but I think that understanding that there's a really great opportunity for you all. It's a very strong commission to really deliver the grid that we need based on some of the things that you're already doing, things that community are saying, and also to really the hopes and desires of Michiganders. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Kamal. Up next, Naili Pineda. I may be getting that sort of wildly wrong. And then after is Clara Keller. I think I might actually be pronouncing right. Naili Pineda, Clara Keller. Okay. Mara Mata. And then after Ms. Mata, Marita Kai.
Hello.
First, I want to thank you all for hosting this meeting and pursuing this audit, and kudos to Liberty Consulting Group. So I have a Master's of Public Health and Health Policy Management from UCLA. So this audit obviously didn't include affordability, and it didn't include the health impact on fellow Michiganders and the impact outages have on their health. We're talking real strains on emergency rooms when the power goes out, and inability to charge medical devices, ruining of food poisoning, ruining of medication that needs refrigeration. These are all health impacts that the audit doesn't consider. And when we talk about reliability, without mentioning affordability, yes, a reliable grid is necessary, but when it's not affordable, it basically functions like an outage, because if I can't pay my bill, my lights aren't on, my fridge isn't running, my microwave isn't going. And so to approve a rate increase or a grid that doesn't deliver, that negatively impacts the health of Michiganders to the point of lowering their life expectancy, I encourage you all, yes, acknowledging you're in a difficult spot, a lot of needs, increasing needs on our grid, but also encouraging you to reject the rate increase DTE is proposing. I forgot to thank you for hosting the Detroit Town Hall. Thank you for doing that. But I encourage you to maybe host more town halls, especially in Detroit and Black and Brown communities who are especially impacted by these outages. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mata. Marita Kai. And then Ray Stanzik.
Well, give me a second to pull up my comment.
We won't start the clock.
Good afternoon, Commissioner Chair and the commissioners. Thank you so much for opening the public comments and also extending the meeting time to hear from folks. And also, I just want to thank you all for having that public hearing last week in Detroit. Echoing the previous comment, I also urge you all to hold more sessions, also specifically in Detroit and also urban and like low income areas to hear from more folks. And echoing from Kamal's comment on the previous audit, like I really appreciate the commission for taking the initiative to audit CMS consumers and also DTE. It's great to hear from a third party on the reliability issues and some improvement plans. I'm also curious to see if we can accept the report from the consulting group. That would be great. And like the past two folks have mentioned, reliability without considering affordability from affordability issue is not adequate. As you all have heard from last week, public comments, many testimonies from folks, primarily low income Black and Brown people with bills upwards of $600 in the winter months for a single household is not acceptable. And specifically hearing from elderly folks with fixed income and with fixed income who are paying like those absurd amount, it's not acceptable. Or should it be okay to even consider more of an increase on those bills when executives, monopoly holders such as consumers, DTE, we're focusing on DTE now, but when DTE executives are gaining like a lot of profits and enjoying this luxurious lifestyle for work when they can cut expenses. So I really urge you all to consider the affordability issues. Also really curious to work and meet with y'all further on just like the processes when considering and reviewing a rate case. And hearing from John, I think that's his name, from John from the consulting group, that when implementing the improvement plan to better the grid and reliability, hearing that there would be a one-time cost. I know that DTE and consumers will likely use that as an excuse to increase more rate to consumers. I urge you to consider the past multiple rate case that the commission has approved in the past several years, and most of those have gone through. And I urge you all to consider that those the rate increase that you all have approved have gone towards shareholders' pockets and executives and the salaries, and also the dark money groups that they fund to influence lawmakers so that they can evade accountability. That is not acceptable. So I urge you all to reflect and consider that the profits they have gained retroactively and how they can cut profits, and also their salaries, as well as other stocks that they would give to the executive and shareholder, so that low-income ratepayers don't have to incur the cost, because right now the current rate is already not affordable for like a lot of regular everyday people. And I acknowledge that I'm making this comment with the luxury of like light and hybrid options, and also in like air-conditioned room, but that's not the reality for a lot of these people that are struggling to make ends meet and doing everything they can to not make their current bills go higher. And this is like everyday people with issues, medical issues, trying to keep the lights on, trying to keep the internet, food on the table for their children, but also themselves. So I really urge you all to consider the affordability issues that faced with Michiganders. Thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you, Marita. And just, we mentioned it earlier, but the docket is, or the audit is available in the docket in U21305. So if you or anybody else wants to go onto our website, michigan.gov/MPSC, at the top, there's a couple of tabs, but the last one is e-dockets. And if you type 21305 into it, you'll see that the audit and the backup materials are filed to that. They were filed earlier this week. Ray Stanzik. And then I don't know if Nayeli Pineda or Clara Keller is here. If not, we'll go to the virtual options.
Also for the opportunity to challenge the medium that seems to come along kinds of meetings. My name is Ray Stanzak. I live in Plymouth Township, Michigan. I also work and live as an independent artist in the Northwest Goldberg neighborhood of Detroit. And in that capacity,
Sorry, Mr. Sandet, could you move the microphone a little closer? We want to make sure everybody on virtually
in
can hear
that
you. Thank you.
capacity, I brought along this electrified Wraith. I presented as an illustration of the juridical personality that I know to be DTE Energy. Sometimes a picture, a visual in our image-obsessed culture is necessary to draw attention to how legislation that has granted legal personhood to corporations gives them power to influence energy policy and public service decisions. More on that at the end of my time here. I believe that DTE Energy's request for a rate increase to raise $456 million is not in the best interest of Southeast Michigan citizens. What I share here today are mostly quotes from an essay by Brian Deese, former director of President Biden's National Economic Council, which was published in the Atlantic magazine on 14 September of this year. Deese says that while ambitious climate legislation, that is the the Reduction Act, has unleashed unprecedented sums of money into developing clean energy. Our current electricity system is failing to meet our demands for clean power. A century ago, says Deese, utilities were granted regional monopolies to sell electricity subject to a basic bargain. They could earn profit by charging consumers for investments in building new power plants and transmission lines. In exchange, they'd commit to providing reliable electricity to all. And there it is. You already know. Angry citizens showed up at Frankfurt High School in Detroit a week ago to say DTE is not holding up their end of the bargain. Deese says the corporate model made sense for much of the 20th century when generating electricity required building big, expensive, fossil fuel powered steam turbines, and utilities need to be assured of a healthy return to handle those upfront costs. But it's a generation out of date. Over the past several decades, tech has opened up new ways of meeting consumers' electricity demand. The 20th century utility model does not encourage energy delivery innovation. Instead, it defaults to simply building more fossil fuel burning plants. As a result, consumers get a less reliable product at higher prices, and decarbonization takes a back seat. On that note, commissioners, I call your attention to DTE's April 25th earning call for investors. In it, CEO Jerry Narcia doubled down on fossil fuels. He made it clear that DTE is committed to fossil gas for the long term, possibly through the end of the century. This is in direct opposition to both federal and state clean energy goals. The underlying challenge here is political. As the incumbents in the electricity markets, some utilities have a track record of undercutting regulatory reform. More often, utilities rely on depressingly legal practice of using money from our electric bills to lobby regulators and legislators. Says Deese, when a utility misuses our money to influence its own regulators, that's simple corruption. And so, back to the Wraith.
And we need to ask you to wrap it up in the next couple of seconds if you can.
Okay. Corporations have achieved legal artificial personhood. In that capacity, they have no center, no essence, and little incentive to innovate electricity generation and delivery when it hurts shareholder value. A rate increase for DTE will not generate necessary change to save the planet for our children or our grandchildren. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stanzik. Thank you for bringing the Wraith. I'm going to try one last time for Nayeli Pineda or Clara Keller. Okay, we will go to the virtual options. I know that we've got a couple of folks teed up there who have been patiently waiting as well. So we'll start with Dee Woods and then Tomina Rawls and Irshad Hussain. So Ms. Woods, you can unmute yourself.
Hey, can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Okay. Hi, my name is Dee Woods. I live on the west side of Detroit. Uh, my family has been in our home for 40 years. I pretty much know all of my neighbors. It's a primarily either middle to lower class area. Um, Again, older individuals, there are a lot of people that have children. Um, so last year, our power was off more than it was on. It took DTEs so long to come and fix our lines. Like if the wind blew hard, the power goes off. Um, and then during the ice storm, my power was off for 7 days. I'm disabled. So I didn't have the liberty of going to a hotel or, staying with someone. I ended up just roughing it out in my house. Um, and I have a disability where if I get cold, my body will lock up. So that happened. We had to throw away mass amounts of insulin because my mom and I both are diabetic. I had neighbors who didn't have food, so thank God I had the privilege of having food programs come by and drop off food, and I could share with them. I've had neighbors who are on oxygen and they had to go away in the EMS because their power was off and they had no way of getting their oxygen. Um, so all of these issues combined now with a rate hike, not to mention during that we still had a higher bill. We barely had power, but yet our bills were so unmanageable we had to go to different programs to get help. That doesn't make sense. Um, so right now we're just asking for an audit. We're asking for an audit of affordability. The people of Michigan deserve to know in depth what you're doing with all of these funds because we're not really seeing it in areas like myself. We're seeing that you're putting money into downtown, doing underground cables, which you're saying, okay, it doesn't work. I have family that live in Midtown, their power doesn't go out. Okay, so it does work. So I am asking to please lower the rate hikes for the sake of Michiganders' pockets. A lot of us cannot afford another rate hike. We're starting to choose between medication or paying DTE. What type of food can we get or pay DTE? It should never be like that. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Woods. Up next, Tomina Rawls, and then Urshad Hussain, and then Javed.
Hi, my name is Tamina Ross. I'm from Meet the People Power program. I'm not going to tell my story. My story is just like thousands of others that are concerned about the DTE and the lack thereof of accountability as well as services rendered. So here's what I'm going to say. I like to request an audit of of a budget that focus on affordability and fairness. I will also recommend, as Mr. John. By the way, a shout out to Mr. John, who still managed to speak to us with his electricity during a hurricane. Also, if possible, uh, we can have an audit of the budget of the executive boards and their shareholders, because from what I gather from his findings, and I'm talking about the consultant, is the fact that there was a lack of accountability for inspections in a timely manner, the lack of accountability for upgrades. In other words, DTE all these years is nothing but a third-rate collection agency. Monies were being wasted when DTE was telling us it was about the trees. When money was being wasted of destroying the trees on people's property while destroying the ecosystem during the climate crisis. Excuse me. Monies was being wasted on infrastructure that has been compared to the 1920s as far as the third world nation. People should have a choice if they cannot correct themselves or rectify themselves as far as us having affordable and constructive electrical power grid. People should, then we should leave it up to the people to have a choice. and they should have a choice, so they should receive better, reliable power sources. Number one, cables should be buried. Number two, power walls, solar panels, and also heating pumps, as they should pay for it. And or number three, if all else fail, go independent. Go independent. Our monies have been wasted all these times that DTE has been constructively asking for raises, and you all have been granting them. They have systematically proven that they are irresponsible and not reliable. And monies are anytime that the power goes out, they spend more money by doing outside researches, such as Indiana, such as Ohio. When we have capable people here, if not, I would advise them to go to the local schools or IBEW or what have you, so that we can have people here that could benefit as well as rely on those who care about us. I thank you for your time. I understand this is hard work, but I feel differently about the meeting last week. The meeting last week was, and how I feel as though is that you guys arrived there just to say that you did something. And also, the person that was presenting on your behalf was rude and obnoxious. And I would advise people, you three, ladies and gentlemen, to please pick a suitable person and not just a person that you think represent their neighborhood and that correct those that are upset at that time. But I do appreciate you coming down. So without further ado, you have a nice day, and thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Ms. Rawls. Up next, we have Irshad Hussain, and then Javed, and then Jackson K. Irshad Hussain, if you're on, if you could, I think I see, try again. It looked like you came off just for a second and try one more time to unmute yourself. It looks like it, from what I can see, it looks like you're toggling back and forth. Maybe try now? No, looks like you're muted again. All right, I promise I will come back to you. We're going to try Javed and then Jackson K, and we'll come back to Irshad.
Okay. Hello, can I be heard?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. I am Javed. I want to start off by saying no more rate hikes. Like, we reject it, we rebuke it. And also, I want to say that we would like to ask the MPS to do an audit of the budget that looks into the affordability and fairness. A lot of people don't know, but we find this crazy that the companies we pay to keep our lights on are constantly keeping us in the dark about a lot. Many people have jobs paying below the amount of money we need to survive on a daily basis. Also, for those who don't know, job means just over broke, and you need two for the rate hikes DTE has thrown upon us. It's not enough that they are already receiving $368 million when no current weatherization has been done to any homes in Michigan unless residents are paying out of pocket. For us to sit up here and continue to pay money and not seeing good results, for us who don't receive food assistance and pay cash for food when we're at 14 plus days without DTE and having a hard time picking back up life because we know it all be life. So again, I say no to the rate hikes that you guys are trying to force upon us. And I would say no to the past ones that y'all had too, because I'm 34. I haven't seen no change, and my grandma's 83 years old. I haven't seen no change since I was a kid, and people still out here using their kids' information as far as DTE. So apparently y'all using that money and it ain't going nowhere. But I digress. My bad. Have a great one.
Thank you, Javed. We'll try Irshad Hussain again.
Hey, can you hear me?
We can now, yes.
Okay. Hey, my name's Irshad Raza Hussain, and I'm a Detroit resident. I was just coming here to speak today about how DTE has affected me and my household. So, formerly I lived at an apartment, and DTE was overcharging for much of the summer, even though we had constant power outages and lack of reliable power throughout the summer. I had to several days, actually 2 separate instances in both August and July, where I had to throw away everything that was in my fridge and all of my food items because the power was not restored fast enough. And I've had collectively about 10 different days throughout the summer where there was not reliable power and I had to stay somewhere else, etc. And lots of those times there was just storms and other things that DTE was responding to, but not as effectively or as quickly as they should have. And so given some of the reports we've seen today from Liberty, I think that it's especially disheartening that a lot of these recommendations aren't being followed through. I think DTE needs to give more reliable and better power to families in the Detroit area because lots of people are counting on them. And in addition, at my new place, they've also been unreliable with some of the power readings. They've been overcharging us for certain amounts of power ratings, and we've actually had to dispute it with them because we've seen different power measurements and electrical measurements. And so we feel that we're being overcharged based on what they're reading. And so there's lots of errors on their end. There's lots of issues that they're having with residents all over. There will be several days on end after any given storm happens where there will be several residents in a given area that don't have power at all. I know past 7 Mile and Ryan, all the way down to 7 Mile, to the edge of 7 Mile where it borders on Grosse Pointe and Detroit's border. Actually, that entire section was without power for a whole week following a storm in August. And lots of areas don't have reliable, consistent power. And so it's really disheartening, especially as the climate worsens and winters get harsher and harsher and people need heat to get by and survive, or people need AC and cooling in the summer and just electricity to keep their regular instruments running in their household, that they're not able to get that reliable power. And it's a shame that DTE is not willing to be held accountable and that they're willing to go out of their way to actually pay money for lobbying against having to actually put more money into the communities, when rather than just paying for lobbying or paying to influence politicians, they could just be paying to actually implement better service in the areas to help Detroiters actually get better power. And yeah, that's basically all I want to say. Thank you so much. And lastly, I would like to call for an audit into affordability and implementation for electric transmission generation, specifically in DTE. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hussein. Jackson K. and then Jennifer Oresti.
Testing, testing.
Yeah, we can hear you, Jackson.
Let's see if the camera works. Hello. My name's Jackson. My name's Jax Copel. Good to see y'all. So first I want to say, it being a substantial part of my day job to try and get good data out of utilities, I appreciate the extent of work that went into and the value that comes out of doing this deep infrastructure audit. I want to kind of deepen on this point that I think came up in the framing of the audit results and in several public comments about the relationship between dealing with the grid problem and affordability. So the things we know right now are that Michigan utilities are consistently underperforming, have been for a long time, and in many ways to deadly effect. That underperformance has had no effect on the rate at which utility shareholders profit or earn money, as best we can tell. And in addition to experiencing the deficient performance, Michigan residents are paying about $600 million more than they can afford, or at least being billed $600 million more than they can afford in order to have energy. Dealing with the grid problem is going to be extremely costly. So I think this is an unjust and unreasonable state of affairs, right? I think it's important to establish, like, what does this tell us? That our baseline right now is that we are in an unjust and unreasonable state of affairs. And without creative intervention, Michigan's most vulnerable ratepayers are going to continue being ground between the mortar of unaffordable rates and the pestle of dangerous and unreliable service. And I think the commission has to be very clear not to accept this zero-sum arrangement between affordability and improvements to the grid. It is not reasonable to restrict essential investment into the grid. It is also unreasonable to expect that we're going to get more blood out of the stone from people in terms of rates. The Commission has to use every tool at its disposal to deal with this zero-sum dynamic between the two. That points towards creative approaches to rate making, programs that go beyond assistance into guarantees of affordability. And there's good modeling from the Energy Equity Project pointing to the fact that there is substantial surplus within the rate base itself that could solve the affordability problem for everyone right now. But in light of the unjust and unreasonable circumstance we find ourselves in, the Commission also has to look really closely at the utilities' finances and look very deeply at all of the ways that we can reduce this tension between affordability and grid investment. That means looking at all the various regulatory assets that are being earned on these different infrastructure investment programs, looking closely at utility rates of return, looking at all the varied financial mechanisms by which DTE and consumers are proposing, again, having been measurably deficient for a very long time, all the ways in which they are proposing to earn profits solving a problem for which they are, in every legal and practical sense, responsible. To put the cost of solving that problem wholly on Michigan's ratepayers is not just, not reasonable, and in many important ways, not necessary. This is a very historic moment. I think the audit is a tremendous step. And it is key that the response to it and the response to this grid problem has the potential to send Michigan's energy future towards deeper racial and economic austerity, or the potential to put us on a path towards a more just and equitable and reasonable energy system. Please understand the stakes of this moment, and please do everything that is in your power to get on the right side of that particular moment in history. Thank you for your time. I'm excited to dig deeper into the audit myself.
Thank you, Mr. Gopal. Jennifer Oresti.
Hi, can you hear me?
Can, yes.
Okay, great. Hi, my name is Jennifer Oresti. I'm a St. Clair Shores resident and a full-time working parent. And to say the least about my journey into motherhood, I did not expect to have a baby in 2022. And despite complicated pregnancy and the hardships that my family experienced during this time, by all accounts, my baby is happy and healthy. But I am here today to speak for families who, like me, have experienced financial stress due to our unstable economy and the COVID-19 pandemic. Us parents and working individuals are tired. I know that there are Michiganders who care about this issue who do not have the time to come to this meeting and make their voices heard today. We all deserve the right to have the power that we pay for in our homes, businesses, and workplaces. My question for everyone in this room and online is to think on is, what does it say to you when your power goes out for hours and days at a time that DTE compensates you all of $35 for your troubles? And that's if DTE deems you eligible for that credit. For a company who had $2 billion record profit last year, how does that make you feel about your humanity and your basic human rights when they shell out pennies in comparison to their profit? And then we see DTE send thousands of dollars directly to our own elected officials and political campaigns while our residents struggle. I would like to ask the MPSC to do an audit of the budget that looks into affordability and fairness to its DTE customers. If you live in Southeast Michigan, you are beholden to DTE. We have no other option to get our power through different channels. We deserve affordable, reliable power, and I shouldn't have to choose between buying my groceries and paying my bill in a month. I should be able to rely on my fridge to stay on during a storm so that the milk that I use to feed my baby won't spoil. I deserve the ability to work from my home and not lose money because the power went out and now I can't do my job. I know DTE isn't going to pay me for that lost time and resources. We the people deserve transparency. We deserve the reliable, safe, and accessible energy that MPSC promises to Michiganders, and we deserve that at a rate that isn't going to make us break the bank. We deserve accountability, and we expect you, the MPSC, to do your jobs to hold DTE accountable. Thank you for your time and hearing me today.
Thank you, Ms. Oresti. I believe that concludes the public comment period of the meeting, but please note that the public may continue to submit comments to the commissioners via email at lara-mpsc-commissioners2@michigan.gov. And again, that email is included in the meeting notice for today. I do have a few brief announcements before we close. The first, as I noted at our last meeting, we will be holding a virtual public hearing to consider or to take comment relating to major electric transmission upgrades proposed by Michigan Electric Transmission Company in case number U-21471. The public hearing will be next week, next Thursday, October 3rd, 2024, from 6 to 9 p.m. The meeting is virtual only with participation available via live stream on Microsoft Teams or by phone. There's information on our website as well as some background information on the process under Act 30 of 1995, as well as the specifics of this particular application. But again, that virtual public hearing will take place next Thursday, October 3rd, from 6 to 9 p.m. The second announcement is that together with the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy, we are announcing a second opportunity to submit applications for funding under Part B of the Propane Resilience Enhancement Program, or PREP. Approximately $2.85 million in Part B funds remains for projects that expand storage capacity connected to expanded propane pipeline and fractionation capacity. There's information on our website for that as well. Applications are due by October 9th, 2024. And again, there's more information on our website as well. My third announcement is a sadder one. I just wanted to recognize the loss of Motor Carrier Officer Daniel Kerstetter with the Commercial Vehicle Enforcement Division of the Michigan State Police. And I note this both because as a fellow state worker, all those we wanted to recognize his loss of life, but also because up until 2015, parts of the Motor Carrier Division were actually housed here at the Commission. And the Commission is in many ways a family. And while Officer Kerstetter never served with the Commission, he actually was hired in January 2023. We certainly know a number of the folks with whom he served, and so want to think of those folks and his family as we sort of mourn his passing in the line of duty. And speaking of the MPSC family, we on October 6th of this year will celebrate 50 years of Paul Proudfoot. So Paul, who's seated in the front row, joined the commission as a young engineer back on October 6th, 1974. And for the last 50 years has been a grumpy old bear that has been, in some ways, I think of him as the heart and soul of this place. In fact, we've got a sign in our office that commissioners come and go, but Paul Proudfoot lasts forever. And I certainly hope that's true. But 50 years affiliated with any one organization is just an incredible achievement. And while this certainly isn't goodbye, this is in no way a retirement. We're excited for the next 50. We did want to take a moment and recognize 5 decades of public service to the MPSC and the people of Michigan. Do we have any additional announcements? Okay, so our next commission meeting is actually scheduled for Thursday, October 10th. At 10 o'clock a.m. and it will be held at the Bessie Center Auditorium, Building 700 on the campus of Bay College, located at 2001 North Lincoln Road in Escanaba, Michigan. This is part of our efforts to get out of Lansing more and visit all parts of the state. So again, this will be a formal commission meeting scheduled for Thursday, October 10th, 2024 at 10 a.m. in Escanaba on the campus of Bay College. There will be virtual participation options available as they are for all of our formal commission meetings. With that, is there a motion to adjourn, Commissioner Peretick?
Yes, I move to adjourn today's commission meeting.
I second the motion.
We will now have a vote on the motion to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by a unanimous vote. The meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody, for being here and for your patience.